Hi, this is Steve Gillmor, and this is the Gillmor Gang, and this is a message from Twitter. Kevin Marks says he's live now on Gillmor Gang with at Steve Gillmor, at J Taschek, at Danny Sullivan, and at Scoble.
Scobe, the dude.
So,
Scobe.
Can we see pictures of each of these criminals?
You don't want to see me.
There's one.
Hi there.
Oh, Danny Sullivan just took his video off.
What?
Doesn't want to be identified.
What? There's a mute on the video button?
His video went away.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Danny, but you need to put the picture on.
I don't know where the picture went.
The little...
The red video button in the top left corner.
Oh, he's got a PC, so who knows where that is.
But it's on a Mac.
On Bill
What's
Gates.
going on? Exactly.
So, Steve, who fired Bob Muglia?
We'll get into that in a second. Did you see my...
Can you see me now?
Did you see my black helicopter rant?
Yeah, I did.
Subject? So, do you agree with me or not? Be very careful. I've got a hand on the abort switch.
Of course I agree with you, Steve.
Okay, so what did I say?
I don't know. I have to go read it again.
Busted. So what happened to Bob Muglia? I think he got fired by Steve Ballmer.
Yep.
Danny Sullivan, what do you think about that?
I haven't even had a chance to catch up with it.
Well, you've heard of Bob Muglia, right?
No. You have to fill me in. It's all Microsoft, and if it's not searched, then I kind of get all clouded over sometimes.
It used to be that if it wasn't Microsoft, you got clouded over sometimes, too.
Yeah.
Okay, so this goes back to, I think Bob was there for 23 years. And there's this guy named Steve Sinofsky who's attempting to rule everything as a result of actually shipping Windows on time, three versions late. When Ray Ozzie left, which some people think was because he was pushed out, but I think he was left because he pushed Microsoft out. Essentially the reboot of Microsoft around their version of what cloud is was pretty much a tag team operation between Ray Ozzie and Bob Muglia. Muglia, who had been given the reins of servers and tool business, therefore was responsible for normalizing the so-called private cloud, which we don't believe is actually, there's any proof of existence of it, and the public cloud, which Salesforce dominates, commercial. And so Muglia he sort of sat astride, and he had a P&L in the organization, which was steadily rising. I believe in the last 3 years they rose 51% revenue in that group, and it was the number 3 largest revenue generator at Microsoft, behind, I assume, Windows and Office. So when Ray Ozzie left, and Ray Ozzie did not have a P&L. He had Gates and I think Ballmer's blessing to basically run the strategy of the company. But when he left, all of a sudden Muglia's P&L was just number 3, and there's all sorts of I think noise about why he left. I think that basically Ballmer is no longer in charge, and he's doing what he can to push things over towards Sinofsky so that he has an exit strategy, because right now he doesn't have anybody to come in behind him. Ballmer's pretty much isolated in that way. And I also think it's just a pathetic attempt at firing somebody for being successful, which I think is similar to Google firing H.264 because it's dominant, and because it happens to run on iOS, which of course is their mortal enemy. What do you think, Scoble?
I like that part of your analysis. Google fired 264 to get out of the licensing fees and take that in-house.
Really? I mean, I don't think that the licensing fees are all that significant. I think it was much more. Kevin, I can't hear you. You've unplugged yourself, which is, of course, convenient.
Google can afford the licensing fees. That isn't the issue for them.
Right.
The issue is more on the platform level, because in order to generate 264 and capture video in that form, you have to pay licensing fees. So anyone building Android devices that create that will have to pay fees for that. So if they're going to get the cost of Android devices and Chrome OS devices closer to zero, they need to get the licensing fees out of that as well. So that's the long-term argument for this. I think this is too soon. I think that they're not going to be able to displace 264 that quickly, because all these devices and all the little ones currently play it and capture it. And I think they're damaging their own browser's credibility by not playing 264 that way.
And they're also damaging their credibility by talking open and then in essence giving Flash artificial resuscitation at the last possible second, thereby muddying the waters and really damaging nobody but their own credibility. Well,
no, they're taking a big open bet. They're taking the same open bet that Mozilla took, which is we're not going to ship the stuff that requires a patent license. So they're doubling down on that, but I think they're doing it too early. Because as it stands, you're right. Flash will now be the only thing that plays both. Whereas before, Flash and Chrome both played both inside the HTML5 video tag. And the problem this leaves us with is it's very hard to be able to use the capabilities of HTML5 video if you've got to make two versions of everything. And it's actually quite hard to do a fallback with HTML5 video, whereas it's a lot easier to say, if you've got Flash, play this thing. If you haven't got Flash, try and use the HTML5 video. So what this means is people will, as you say, keep using Flash for longer rather than switching to HTML5 video. I think that's a shame. I think the post that they put up just recently, a few minutes ago.
Oh, they re-explained it now?
I'll stick the link in the friend feed. They're basically saying we need one baseline codec, and I think this is this is missing the point. This is saying there will be one true format for video, and there isn't. There has never been one true format for video. The closest we've had is 264. And that's taken a lot of work and grief to get to. And there will be new formats in the future. Plus, there is terabytes of video out there on the web in other formats that we're going to need to keep playing. The right answer is to be able to play some of that old video rather than saying, everything coming forward will be re-encoded. And unless Google is going to re-encode every bit of video on the web into WebM so that we can play it back, we're going to need to be able to play all this old stuff for a long time. Video up on the web for 20 years.
If you're right about that, then one possible scenario is that Google is trying to force everybody to have multiple encodings, thereby running them out of the market because they can't afford to do what Google does with YouTube. So,
are they doing this in YouTube though? Because
not
from what
yet.
I read, right? So what they do in Chrome is like kind of a sideshow, but what they're doing when they're actually putting out the video itself is the bigger issue. If they
YouTube is generating WebM moving forward.
But if they make that shift, by the way, Kevin or anybody, if they make that shift and suddenly the YouTube video that we have out there right now, that's the H.264 that we're talking about. Is that how it's put out?
Currently, I think they code in multiple formats.
Yes, one of which is H.264.
Yeah, 264 is the sort of key one they use for the high quality stuff, and they play that back either in Flash or natively on the iOS devices. And if you click the HTML5 button, they will play that now. They've started encoding WebM videos on YouTube, and I think that's going to be part of the pipeline going forward.
But that would be fine.
If they drop that, by the way,
they're doing both. Yeah.
So I understand. If they dropped H.264 on YouTube entirely, I could still view stuff on my iPad because they would still do the translation on the back end, and basically I wouldn't notice a difference. Is that right?
No. If they drop it, then they drop it.
If they drop it, they're not holding it anymore. But they haven't said they're doing that.
They haven't said that. They waited until they got 10% market share with Chrome, so they think they have enough leverage, and they also can slipstream behind the fact that Mozilla, which can't play on the iPad anyway. Has kind of orphaned themselves by refusing to support H.264. So they're kind of hiding under the skirts of Mozilla on the one hand, and on the other hand, they're waiting to get enough momentum going, alleged momentum around WebM, so that they can then go to a unification around YouTube stuff.
But why couldn't they do that on YouTube? But I mean, if their grand conspiracy is bring in Flash and somehow stick it to Apple, which, sorry, I'm being attacked by some small insects you can't see, but if that's their grand conspiracy, why on earth do it around Chrome? Just do it on YouTube.
That's one of those auto bug.
Yeah, it was another bug that was coming in.
Working on now.
But I mean, they could flip the switch on YouTube tomorrow, and if they were trying to force that sort of thing to happen, then
no,
they
could.
But then
they're trying to
everything would
use
break.
the momentum of one thing to get to the stage where they can get away with doing that with YouTube.
Right. I mean, in fact, they've already done this once with YouTube, right? So, a few years ago, all the devices wanted to play YouTube, and some of them started basically putting Flash emulators in there. The Wii has a Flash emulator that plays the old YouTube videos on it, and that was their way of playing the video. They then worked with Apple to generate the 264 versions, so they had something standardized that lots of people could play with chipsets, and they went through that there. And so the manufacturers have been through a process of standardizing on 264 to play back YouTube, because all the devices wanted to play back YouTube or capture to it, cameras and uploads and stuff like that. So they've been through a cycle of, okay, we can arrive at a de facto standard here. And their assumption is they can do that again with WebM. They can say, okay, in the future going forward, your devices can move to WebM. Oh, and by the way, you'll stop having to pay those fees to the MPEG-LA.
Yeah, but the fees are just...
The encoding fees are more significant than the decoding fees. If you're putting a device that captures and uploads the stuff, the patent license there is more noticeable than the playback and download one. The playback stuff is, you don't have to pay anything for putting it up yourself. You pay $6.5 million a year for unlimited ability to host it, which is what YouTube's paying, what Apple's paying, what Adobe's paying, what Microsoft is paying. But to actually generate and encode it, there's a different scale of royalties that is more expensive.
But so now they have to pay. They have to pay $6.5 million to have people write on their own blog explaining how they are upending open source by not supporting it. How does that work? It's just mind-bogglingly stupid as far as I'm concerned. Taschek, what do you think?
I agree with Kevin that it's premature, and from an announcement perspective or a communications perspective, it's not been handled well at all, which is why there's so much friction around it. Because they didn't appeal to the developers, they didn't appeal to the video people or the Flash audience. They just said, "Here's what we're doing," and that's a big mistake. And per what you said, they're trying to get to a 10% market share before they, start rolling. That's a huge mistake. 10% market share is no company's goal ever, I don't think, especially with the size of Google. As far as the video goes, I mean, I guess they can always justify it and say there are some technological advantages over VP8, and
unfortunately, that's not true.
I'm just saying they could justify it by saying there might be some in some cases.
No, I think that what Scoble said is the only justification that they have put forward for it is that they'd save the licensing fees, which I don't think. I think that's a complete straw man.
Yeah, but
it's not when you are talking about hundreds of millions of handsets that need to have this technology to play back, right?
So,
yeah.
So what are they going to do?
I'm thinking about it from the terms of, if you're in Google, you might see that there's a huge acceleration. That's a bad expression, but a huge momentum behind what they're doing internally. They might have some of their own myopia here, where they get some of the hardware manufacturers to include acceleration like ARM and others, and they say, well, ARM has most of the market, so the mobile market, so it's good for us, it's good, but they don't actually see the bigger picture of all the things that are already being used, and how they're being used, and where the momentum is going as far as tablets go. So if they're using this to try to reduce the price of Chrome or systems using Chrome or Android, it's way too early. Or either that, or it's brilliant, and they're just testing the market, and then will change their mind next week or something.
Yeah, but you know what I think about that? I think that's a huge weak sign that they're testing the market, because now they got to put out blog posts every week saying that they really mean it.
Yeah,
they can't back away from it now.
Yeah, but they get your positioning.
What?
For a user who has this new Chrome browser that doesn't have H.264, what happens when you hit a video that's in this format? What does it do?
It gives you a can't play it box.
Or
Yeah,
get
don't you
this
just
plugin.
download some plugin that'll do it for you?
Yeah.
No, well, it depends how you mark the page up. If you just
Yes, you
say
can, actually.
video file type equals, video file equals MP4, and it'll load it and won't be able to play it, you'll get a grey can't play it box like
But
you
they,
do with.
Unless you have a
they
plugin
say in there,
loaded.
yeah, right. Well, I mean, they're saying in the post that most of this video is viewed through Flash or Silverlight, right? So,
Yeah.
I assume
They'll say get the plugin, which is okay to them if you're looking at it from Google's own experience. Again, in myopia, I'm not agreeing with this. They could say, well, it's a better experience than the iPad trying to say something that's Flash only because there's no plugin for it. You click it and it says, well, download the new Flash, but it doesn't. Of course, there's nowhere to go.
So what they're doing is pushing the cost off to Adobe or Microsoft.
sure.
To fix it, yeah, absolutely.
Not only that, what they're doing is setting up a plugin architecture, which they can then create their own plugin, which is called WebM.
Got it.
Yeah. So the
Well, it
biggest
won't be a
problem with
plugin
it,
though, right? Because it'll be native to Chrome.
right, and nowhere else.
Is Flash native to Chrome, by the way? It's been a while since I've actually installed it fresh.
I
It's
believe so
installed
now.
with it. Yeah.
Okay, so
But it's
That's not native. That's it's packaged with it.
well, I
Well-
mean, I guess I don't care if it's packaged or not. If I download Chrome and I get these things and everything works without me having to do anything, to me that's native.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess that
Yeah.
goes to the theory that they're propping up Adobe a little bit more before they try to push this out in mainstream.
Yeah, I don't think that they're trying to prop up Adobe. I think they're just trying to, rub Apple's nose in it, and I think it's not
That's
working.
propping up Adobe, though. I mean, rubbing out. I mean, it's the fight
I
between.
mean, what does Adobe make on Flash?
Nothing. They sell tools.
Exactly. So I
Yeah.
mean, they're not propping up Adobe. They're extending Adobe's pain and runway before crashing and burning. I mean, so what? The thing that I find really stupid is, and the relationship between that and what Ballmer did with Muglia, is that Muglia was the guy at Microsoft who actually understood both sides of the equation. He understood the server side. He understood, where Microsoft was coming from, and he understood where they needed to go to, because he and Ray Ozzie were a tag team. Getting rid of that is, basically it's either peak on Ballmer's part that Ozzie quit, or it just shows that he hasn't got a clue as to what he's going to do. What's he going to do with this fantastic new team? Who's he going to get to, when you've got somebody who has taken the servers and tools business. I mean, what other Microsoft president has done as well?
Well, that's the thing.
It's like, here, your reward is you're fired.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he had
So
23 years and a $23 billion business, but not only did he understand it, he was the guy who was on site at all the big companies. He was like their go-to guy. Like, if it's a large company, he gave them their cell number. They would call him. They wouldn't call, of course, anybody else at Microsoft. It was Bob, and they lose that critical component. That said, Microsoft is a huge organization. There's a lot of depth. It's just that these people aren't known, and who knows what their thinking is. That's also a communication.
So what was the
error.
pissing match that Bob got into with Ballmer? Nobody
I
can
think
figure that
that's-
out.
I
Do you
think that's
have some
bullshit.
insight?
I don't think there was any pissing match at all. I think this
Oh,
is...
well, you don't get fired if you're not trying to piss on something.
Well,
No, you
fire
get
is a word that I saw bandied about, but is it actually what happened?
Yeah, he got fired. If you read the memo from Ballmer, it's, Bob and I sat down and talked about the future, and then I showed him the door. I mean, that's what it says. He's nice about it, but he wrote his own blog post that said basically, what part of doubling revenue and, I mean, he made the points that we've already made here. But the relationship between that, tortured as it might be, at least it got on TechMeme, so it's torturing a lot of people now. The relationship between that and what Google is doing with H.264 is that basically Google is telling developers and partners, how's that Google TV thing going? Just before CES and just before Christmas, they basically say, hey, slow down, Matsushita, or whatever you guys are doing, because it doesn't really work. And besides, Apple is selling the same thing for $100, and we're selling it for $500. And if you go into a Best Buy, if you really want to have a comedy session, you can go listen to what they explain about that. The only thing more tortured in terms of explanation is what 3D is useful for at Best Buy. So, instead of copying to their strategy, they wrap themselves in the mantle of this. I'll use Kevin's construct, which is licensing. Going to a free environment. Forget about the fact that none of WebM or V8 has been patent tested for liability.
Well, it has, to the extent that Google has been shipping it for a while and no one sued them yet. The big argument against
Google's,
this
it took a while for Oracle to sue Google. It may take them a while to.
But the thing is, back 10 years ago when I was at Apple trying to get them to ship Vorbis in QuickTime, the argument against this was Fraunhofer Labs, Dolby, someone else with an audio patent could challenge us, and then we'd lose our ability to play DVDs and stuff in the Macs as an injunction. So we won't do this open source thing because someone will turn up the patent. So Google's basically pulled that bluff and said, okay, we will ship the WebM stuff on YouTube, in our browsers, on our clients. If you've got a patent, come and sue us. And no one has come and sued them. So the argument that submarine patents will destroy this is a little specious in that
it's not specious. It just needs to be folded in. It needs to be folded into the equation. And I wouldn't be surprised at the end of the day it's going to turn out to be the same licensing deal that these patent farms, and roll-ups of which H.264 is a tremendous part, isn't going to be normalized with whatever WebM really is. So to make it an argument about licensing, I think is specious in the same way that you suggest that what I'm saying is. But more than that, it just goes to the heart of the sense of trust that Google is engendered with developers. And, by the way, people out there who listen to this stuff, there's something that happened in between the time that this all started and what they did in the last couple of days, and that is that the iPad came along and completely changed the market. Yeah. And Scoble, it took them an hour and a half to run around to see all the, your famous tablet video. I mean, I haven't even started watching that. Yeah. But, did you find out anything?
What, at CES, the 35 tablets?
Did you find out that tablets are, which of those tablets is going to be successful?
The Motorola won Best of Show, so that's the one.
The Zoom?
The Zoom.
So,
did it change the market? Did it bring anything dramatic? No, it's a copy of the iPad, and with a few features, camera. An iPad 2 is going to come out in a month or two. And so
this is that moment. We should just get a freeze frame of this, Kevin, so that we don't have to actually cut to you. We can just cut to the
Which one is that?
This is some random Chinese one that costs $50. It just looks like an iPad.
Kevin, how'd you get Android to run on an iPad?
It isn't an iPad. It's a Chinese thing that looks like an iPad.
Exactly.
It's the wrong size. Look.
It doesn't. Does it run WebM? I guess
yeah, but what plugin do you use to get that to run on the iPad?
Play some video.
Well, I've got to wait for it to boot yet. Hang on.
Can you load iTunes up for us?
I'm putting up another video this afternoon with a new developer who just shipped an app that's getting 5 stars, and he explains why they chose iPad. First of all, they have 10 million units in the marketplace, where the Galaxy Tab has sold 1 million. But he says it's just more fun to develop on right now, and
even more fun in a couple of weeks when they drop 4.3 or whatever it is. Yeah. I'm already getting really sick of having to double click the button in order to get to the screen, so that I can then choose the Wall Street Journal only to go back to it reloading Wall Street Journal from the beginning and then putting up today's Wall Street Journal when I haven't even read last week's, which is about to scroll off, so I need to get back to that one, right?
Steve, I had to find the Wall Street Journal on my table, and one nice thing though is that when I was reading it, it saves the memory of where I left off because I left it open till the middle of the page, and when I came back down this morning,
I'm looking for those features on the iPad. And they're going to get there before they get on, 77 T-pads or whatever the other things are called. So the bottom line is that
the official tablet of the T-pad party.
Yeah. Xenophrenia asked about the BlackBerry Playbook in the chat room. Nice device, no apps.
Well, it doesn't ship.
Well, it hasn't shipped yet, but there's no apps, and developers who are building the bleeding edge companies are not talking about building apps for it. So until they have the same problem,
they may have some runway in the enterprise space.
Except, of course, if you have a web browser, you have a lot of apps.
Yeah, but sorry, that's not what's going to drive. You go into Best Buy and compare.
Oh, you mean that the web is
tablets.
You can play the web. So in other
what
words,
are the most popular apps on the iPad again?
Things like Flipboard, Wall Street Journal. Murdoch is going to make a big deal about his new app coming out in a month.
But those are things that when you go to the iPad App Store, they are positioning for you and saying you should get these things, right?
Or your friends show them to you.
The Wall Street Journal app isn't just magically doing well because everybody in the world said, "Oh my God, this is the best thing in the world. I need to get it." Right?
It's the best thing in the world for the Wall Street Journal right now.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal's talking about it. Oprah held up her iPad on her Christmas show and said, "Get my freaking app." You don't think people are going to go into a store and say, "Does this thing have an Oprah app on it?" Hell yes.
Let me get to the Oprah website.
No, she talked about her app on her show.
Of course she did. Of course she did.
And so you're going to buy it. She says it's her favorite thing.
I imagine Apple is going to talk about the Oprah app and how you should have. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think that I think it's important to also remember that some of the success of these apps comes down to the fact that Apple can position those apps and will position those apps and does a fantastic job of gathering everybody to go around and pimp apps, even if you don't necessarily need to have the apps, right?
I'm sorry, the Oprah experience on the iPad app is a lot better than the Oprah experience on the web, on an iPad.
Okay.
So she holds up the iPad and shows off how your fingers dance through the app.
Let me finish my point because it ties in with what Robert just said. So I'm getting really tired.
I like Robert knowing the Oprah experience, first of all.
I do too. But somebody has to
go,
do
Robert.
It. I'm glad it's Robert.
She's number one in media right now. I study the greats. I watch all sorts. I watch Rush Limbaugh too. So there you go.
Well, now we're getting off track.
Oprah's okay.
I'm waiting for my magic, web end button where I can roll back and cut out references to large drug addict right-wing people.
Oprah is a large drug addict right-wing people?
Absolutely not. Oprah is a national institution. And Rush Limbaugh is furniture.
And aside before you go on, Steve, I met the judge, Winona Judd at the Fox Studios when I was on there, and I said I saw you on Oprah. She said, "You watch Oprah?" And I go, "Yeah, I watch Oprah when you're on." She had a good laugh at that.
All right, so here's my point that I was trying to make, which is that I'm getting sick of navigating between the double-click home button and these different apps. Now that we have multitasking, or Apple's version of it, which, by the way, doesn't brick the device after 40 minutes like the Evo does, or whatever the latest and greatest Android quote device is. So 4.3, MG Sigler writes, and from Apple Insider or somebody, that there's this swipe now. You swipe up, and it goes to the to this thing. Even better, if you want to go from the Wall Street Journal to the New York Times apps, you just go like this or like this.
You got to show that again.
This. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's a, whatever this is, horizontal, vertical.
Looks like you're trying to orchestrate us.
So what they're
I
doing
am.
is
It's
trying
like
to.
that ad where
They invented Switcher?
Yeah.
Well,
I
what
gotta
they're trying
buy
to.
my
an
point
Oprah's app,
is
by the
that
way,
that's
I'm just
going to
sorry.
be-
I gotta spend $3 for it. $4
for what?
Oprah's app.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, way more
Why?
than that. Yeah.
content costs money, baby.
We
Well,
now
baby,
pause.
I get the Oprah magazine. I don't need to buy her app.
$4 for her app, yeah.
Let's give Danny a moment to internalize
I'm
this.
sorry. I'm sorry.
And guess
Oprah.
what? A lot
But
of
if
people
I already
do
buy
'cause
your
it's Oprah.
magazine, why do I have to buy your app? Why
I mean,
can't
I
you
have
just
to
give it
wait.
to me for
I have to
free?
spend $3
It's
to wait for
number
you to get
81 on
this.
the top grossing chart,
The
Oprah.
woman can give everybody cars. She can't give me her app for free.
Well, you have to go down to the.
Does
to
it
the
come
set.
without ads?
I don't know.
It's all an ad.
It's all an ad. I mean, her whole
It's an ad
show's
for
an ad.
Oprah.
I mean,
Hi,
come
I'm
on.
Oprah.
Every time she gives away a car, you think she bought them? The hell no. General Motors bought them. It's a big ad.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna buy
look what
this
happened to
app.
Pontiac.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Who?
spend the $4.
Yeah, she gave away all those Pontiac G6s, right?
Yeah.
A couple years
But
later,
giving away
Pontiac.
an app that has absolutely no production value is something impossible.
So my point is that Apple, in a software refresh, in a couple of weeks or so, is going to make multitasking enjoyable, and it's going to force all the app providers like the Wall Street Journal to actually save state where you are in the app when you leave it, and when you come back, and it's going to be enormous. And to Scoble's point, it's a hell of a lot better than dicking around with some web page.
This is so reminiscent of the 1990s when Windows multitasking versus task switching came around, and
Right at the time,
Yeah.
I mean, the Amiga did multitasking in 540K
I'm
5
not-
years
I-
earlier. But
I
so
guess
what?
I'm not taking away that apps can make an experience better. I mean, I love the Twitter app, for example, on the iPad. It's a much better way of dealing with Twitter than if I had to go and use the Twitter webpage. I'm just saying, to suggest that a tablet is useless or is
It's not useless. It's
well,
just
right, but I mean,
a
they
nicer experience.
they do have web browsers, and web browsers can do a lot of amazing things.
They
I know,
can
but
do a
they-
lot
And
of
in
amazing
fact,
things, but they aren't made to.
the Android tablets that have web browsers that can actually run Flash, in some instances, are going to do a better job for you.
Nonsense.
I
than-
disagree. Totally.
Totally
really
nonsense.
For touch.
I mean,
Flash just does not
if,
do well
if
with
all
the touch.
modern cars came with that crank that they used at the beginning to start the car, remember that? Model T, you had to,
I don't,
you had to
Steve.
crank
I've heard of it.
the car. So let's leave. Let's ship all cars with the crank, even though we don't use it anymore.
You walked.
I
into
even
that
think
one,
I'm
Steve.
funny on that one. Yes,
No,
Danny?
no, I agree with you though. The apps can definitely make a difference. They can be a big, huge thing. And don't get me wrong, the iPad. When I played with the Android tablets, and I've only done a little bit, I feel like the iPad is a great experience. And it really is a nice. It's a nice experience to go through.
See,
And-
I think the tablet manufacturers this year are going to match the experience of the iPad, but they're not going to have the apps. The BlackBerry tablet, the RIM tablet, the Playbook, whatever they call it, is actually a really nice tablet. It feels nice playing with it. It's well engineered. It looks great, but it has no apps. It doesn't have Oprah on it, so therefore it's not going to sell at Best Buy.
It has no velocity with apps. It's not the individual apps. It's
Yeah.
not anything but the trend.
But it's a long
the
tail.
network
Everybody-
effect of apps is enormous.
I'm
It's
using Oprah
equal
because
to the
Oprah has
web
an audience, right?
velocity.
Everybody is going to come at the app world with their list of 5 apps, and it's all going to be different. It's the same reason Microsoft
but-
was never able to take shit out of Excel, right?
Yeah, but
everybody would say,
here's
"Why
where-
is Excel so big and bloated? Take 10% of the features out." Well, each feature had 100,000 users, and nobody
but
was willing to cut that out.
Here's where it starts to fall apart, okay? I don't think people want a device where the only way I start to actually get to things is if I install an app for each and every
Of course
little thing
not.
I go to.
But Steve Jobs,
Right.
he started his apps through the HTML hole. I mean, it's
Right.
always part of the strategy, deeply embedded in the strategy, is that you can get to these things from a web page.
But
When
if you
I
go-
when
if-
I
if-
run
but if
out
you go-
of
if you go out further, so okay, so I've got a device now that's trying to orient me towards having apps, especially for my more frequent users. And it will make sense for me to do that because a lot of my frequent users want that, and I'm a developer or I'm a publisher. And I think, well, I better develop an iPad type of thing. But I think it's absurd to think that if I know a lot of people are using the iPad, that I'm then going to ignore millions of people, and it is millions of people already, that are using Android devices, Android tablets that will want apps. And it's not like I can't have an Android app that will work on a lot of different Android devices as well, right? Now I got to go and I've got to develop yet again another app. And that starts to be a pain. And I could be, well, I'm just going to ignore Android altogether, but that's just stupid. Why wouldn't you want that audience? Or I've got to maintain two things. Or what happens down the line is you get developers that have had enough and said, I want to develop in one place for both platforms, and I don't give a shit about your guys' own little fight that's going on about it. And then the question, I think,
yeah,
to me
I
is,
think long
does
term,
Apple manage to
I think
stall
long
that?
term, you're right. I think the developers will, people will come out with systems that get back to something like the web again, but not in the next 6 months.
But the next 6 months is not really what this is
no,
about.
but
This
think
is
about
about
the web as well.
positioning.
I like that we'll get back to systems that are like the web because we have the web.
No,
We have the web,
the
you
web
know.
doesn't do this touch interface.
That's the
really well, right?
rationale for support of
It's
HTML5
starting to
is
get
that
there.
that's going to happen. I mean,
It's starting to
this
get
is
there, but
common
it's not there. I mean, nobody's shown me a website that looks like Flipboard, for instance, yet. I'm sorry,
God.
it just hasn't happened yet. It's
Am I gonna
close, but
get-
it hasn't gotten to that point of fit
Flipboard?
and finish.
All right, do I have to buy Oprah's magazine every month then, too? Did I just buy only like one edition for $3 on my thing?
How much is the Danny tax to have to wait for him to absorb this
No, I'm just
Oprah
saying, like,
meme?
I've downloaded the app now because it was so awesome. It keeps crashing, by the way. It's
When
really
you go
awesome.
into Safeway and you buy
Look,
Oprah's magazine on the newsstand, do you have to buy it every month?
But I get the Oprah magazine, so I don't want to
Yeah.
have to go buy it again on my. Look, it's crashing.
Danny's got the big O.
Watch
at
it crash.
He
Watch
looks
it
so
crash.
happy. Look at that.
Crash.
There's a consumer with a product.
Get big, get big. Why aren't you getting big? Okay. Sorry.
Again.
Way.
Now,
I'll go.
I agree that is a problem. The
Oh, it's talking to me. Oprah's talking on my iPad. Hey,
And
everybody.
you're having a crash.
This is kind of nice.
So in any case, MG Sigler just came in on my Mac app.
Who knew you could
For
get geeks to watch Oprah?
MG Sigler says, so much for standards. Google says WebM plugins coming soon for Safari and IE9. Boing.
Yeah, but I read on Engadget that they said it was
Sorry,
awesome. So
who said that?
I think we're gonna have a TechCrunch Engadget fight going on.
Yeah, but guess what? Guess what? Safari and IE9. Do plugins work on the iOS?
No.
Right. So this is only and all about an attack on the iPhone and the iPad. That's all this is about. And it's a stupid play on Google's part, which they will probably back away from laboriously over months.
They were water testing, as I said before.
And you know what I said about it when you said
Yep.
that.
I may agree with you
Exactly.
at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the you have to be on Chatter to understand what we're talking about. So, Muglia. Danny, do you understand what has happened with Microsoft? Do you
It
remember
sounds
Microsoft?
like that they're really screwed up on the executive front.
Well, they've been
With
screwed
good
up for
reason.
a long time. I mean, there's
Yeah.
always been a lot of infighting, a lot of empire building in there, and I bet that's what there was some subtext that we're not seeing in public about.
They
what
should
was
hire
going
Steve
on.
Jobs.
Well, Steve Jobs wouldn't be. First of all, Steve Jobs needs dictatorship control, and it's Ballmer that's the dictator. So
Yeah.
no, they're not.
I
Going
don't read that as there was a post on TechMeme that I saw. Joe, what's his name? He used to be at CNET or eWeek. He's
Joe Wilcox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which basically says that now we're seeing the real bomber. Finally he's come out of hiding, and now everything is going to be okay. And I extrapolate from the post, but I don't see that. I don't see this as I mean, Balmer at Gartner 360, he was hunkered down. He was explaining rather than pointing the way. It was more notable for what he wouldn't talk about. He wouldn't talk about tablets. He wouldn't talk about tablets. He goes to CES and doesn't talk about tablets. I mean, I
wouldn't talk about tablets either. Windows is an awful OS for tablets, and they're never going to be able to fix it. Here's an idea. If you walk into Balmer's office and say, you know what, Steve, we're getting our ass kicked by Apple, and HP's coming out with their Palm OS, and Android's coming out with 35 tablets, and they're going to we're getting our ass kicked. So we need to do some major changes to our OS. We need to get rid of the camera. We need to get rid of multitasking. We need to get rid of printing. We need to get rid of we got to get rid of this thing called Office. We can't run Office on this new tablet. What do you think he's going to say? He's going to say, you're fucking fired. Follow Bob Muglia out the door. See you later. And yeah, and
but that's not Balmer talking. That's Steve Sinowski talking.
Isn't that Windows Phone 7?
What?
Well, Windows Phone 7 is interesting because they made
Does it have Office? It doesn't have Office in it.
Does it have Office? Does it have Office? Does it have a camera?
It has a version of Office, but not the Office that I use on my Mac or my PC, right?
I mean, they use OpenOffice?
No, they use a smaller, lighter, made for...
If you make Office smaller and lighter, it's not Office anymore.
Yeah.
Who needs Office? What we need
I need Office.
No, I don't anymore. I don't have it.
I use Twitter. I use Twitter client more than I use Office now.
I need Outlook.
By a big margin. I mean, it takes forever to find the remotely interesting tweets that are out there, but so that needs to be improved with filters or whatever. But the way that we communicate now, direct messages and @ mentions have replaced the inbox for me significantly.
Yeah,
Chatter replaces internal email at Salesforce significantly.
Yeah. And Box.net's coming out in a week with their next system. They have 5 million enterprise users.
What are they doing there, Robert? I saw a big sign on 101 saying the future is going to change or something like that. What is
they're rolling around? They're rolling along. They're like Salesforce. They're copying Salesforce's model, which is take Microsoft apart.
And you're going after the SharePoint angle?
I mean, absolutely. They're 100% aimed at SharePoint, taking SharePoint apart.
What is SharePoint?
SharePoint, so at least when I used it at Microsoft, it was a way to share documents with other people.
Right.
And collaborate around those documents.
WebDAV with what?
Documents, PowerPoints,
WebDAV with what?
Yeah,
remember WebDAV?
Check out.
Box.net takes SharePoint into the cloud, so they iterate every couple of weeks. They have all the advantages Salesforce has, and it's collaborative because it's built on the web, and it's social, right? So you can talk about your SharePoint, your PowerPoint with other people, and it actually looks like it's a good addition to Chatter, right? You have Chatter for one thing, you have Box.net next to it. Now get rid of Office.
They've got a Salesforce integration, and they have a great partner strategy, it looks like, from the outside. I mean, they're going after the right partners.
Every time I go there and visit them every year for the last 4 years. Every time it's doubled in size. I mean, they have 120 employees now. It's crazy. They have 5 million users. It's like, wow. When you visit there, it's like, wow, this is a company that's going somewhere. And all they're doing is following Mark Benioff. Benioff took apart a piece of Microsoft. They're taking apart another piece of Microsoft, and
and
great model.
And they've got this huge partner in Apple, which is taking apart the rationale for Office completely. I mean, what part of Office is on the iPhone or the iPad?
Yeah, in fact, they said that the iPad is driving enterprise adoption of their product big time. They said you wouldn't be shocked at the big companies who are rolling out hundreds, thousands of iPads inside the corporation to salespeople and other places. And they're getting a lot of adoption because they're compatible with the iPad.
At the Gartner symposium, I was expecting, 20% penetration of iPads. I was in a huge room. It was about mobile, but it was the biggest session of the conference. And looking left and right, there were about 40% up to 60% of the room were using iPads. I mean, people, if you go to an airport, look and see how many iPads there are. It's doubled in the last month.
Yep.
Okay. So none of them are running Office in any way. They're running connectors that talk to other systems. There's I don't know what it is, a MAPI connector that we use
that's
for
not
the
quite
Exchange
true,
server.
Steve. You can use something like Citrix to call into a server farm or a desktop computer that's running Office and sort of show it, still get into Excel.
That sounds convenient. You can do that over, the Wi-Fi, which is already completely choked on airplanes. You could go to, you can't even get into Outlook Web Access on an airplane. The document type is way too verbose. It's too thick.
Yeah.
Nobody uses it.
I had to use it last night. I was using it at 11 p.m. No one else was on it, but it was a bad experience.
Yeah, it's people do not create documents that in the same way that they used to, and it's all about the when you move it to the hand, from the it's not that we replace the keyboard. I mean, that's what they said about the iPad, that the virtual keyboard is unusable. It's not unusable. I have started numerous columns and sometimes finish them on the iPad because I get an idea on the train or anywhere, and I've got the device.
Yeah.
This is the communications that are going on. I've written about this thing called the @mention cloud. I think that's a serious architecture for communications. Right now, Twitter is ahead. Twitter direct messages, they show up on the front of the phone without unlocking it. There's one now. Twitter, it says. And it's Rob Legess saying that some show named Gillmor Gang's on. This is a what would you call it? It's a bottleneck. It's the new bottleneck. This has replaced email. Email is no longer the first notification that you get of an alert about something. Direct messages come first. @mentions come second. Email, the thing will buzz, but you've got to go into it and open up the document. This is a transformation, and it is death to Office. Office cannot survive this.
Yeah.
So when Google intermediates that and basically frustrates or sends a signal that they are so autocratic that they think that they can frustrate the millions of people that are using this device, this is a bad day at the PR company.
How are they frustrating people on the phone?
What do you mean?
How did we get to Google frustrating people on the phone?
If they drop 264,
If they drop 264, and all of a sudden when you hit on a YouTube button, it says, please, get an Android phone, you think that's going to go down well?
If that's what it said, but I don't think that's what it's going to say.
I don't either. I don't think
why does it,
they've already backed off. In 12 hours, they backed off from this.
But why is that? Why is that not acceptable from Google, but then acceptable for Apple to roll out a device that doesn't do Flash and to say we don't do it because of blah 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 blah, and that
blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
they said they don't do it because they don't want to have Adobe, a company that makes graphics software, dictate the shape and the scope of their platform. Apple is rebooting portable computing around a different metaphor.
And so I don't get to have Flash on my device.
Exactly. Thank God.
I'm not a big Flash fan, but I can't even have it if I want it.
Flash is not written.
But if Google wants to reboot web-based video by going to a standard that they think is not going to be maybe hindered by a patent or anything else.
But we've already pointed out that that's nonsense in both directions.
Well, I mean, I think Apple's got plenty of nonsense in their direction as well.
No, Apple is not being.
Oh no,
Apple is
Apple's
not waving
Apple
the
didn't
open
thought
flag
Flash,
and
but out
then
of the goodness of Apple's heart, it thought, I'm only going to do things that benefit the entire web.
Apple doesn't go there. It says we're going to do something because we know that there are lots of people out there that want this, and even if they don't know they want it yet,
There's
they're
lots
going to
of
want
people
it.
who want Flash on their iPhone and their iPads.
Not me.
I know, but there are lots of people who want it. And lots of
I don't
people who
think so. They
want
want the video. They don't care how it gets there. They want
They
the
want
video.
to be able to get to websites that actually work rather than get to lots of broken
No,
plugins.
they don't want to get to websites. They want to get to apps.
No, they do want to get to websites that work. And it's not hard to
Here we
find.
go again.
No, you can. Who says I want to go out onto the web and I want a lot of broken
This show is easy to get to because there are websites that support H.264 and support, video like YouTube. YouTube is a fantastic product.
I agree with you that if Google made a change and said the only way for you to get this is to use Android, that would be very.
What else are they talking about?
Well,
Why would they do this? Why would they piss off anybody
well,
for
first
no
of all, they
reason?
haven't done it on YouTube. They've done it on Chrome. And by doing it on Chrome, apparently it affects nobody because you're going to have Flash already installed. So you're going to watch the video, it sounds like, in most cases, without actually knowing who or what or why the video is coming to you.
You know
right?
what? Do you know how many times I get in Rock Blast or whatever it's called? I get I see you're yelling at me and the delay on the Ustream scene. I thought you were yelling and your sound was off.
Oh.
It's just historical. I don't know how many times the Flash plugin has crashed, and it comes down in this little notification box that I see like an hour later.
Agreed.
And in the meantime, I think
Flash
that
has
all
lots
these
of bugs,
websites are
Flash has lots
broken.
of issues, don't
or
like
working
Flash.
faster, yeah.
I mean, why do you want to be beholden to some, isn't in the enterprise it's called one throat to choke.
But I'm already.
I want to know
beholden to a
which
company- I'm
throat
already
to
beholden
choke.
to a company called Apple that determines what on earth I can do on this device.
And then
that
they do something
I
called
paid
they
good
market
money
it.
for.
They put a price on this thing and
Yes.
they say, "Are you interested?" And I say, "You bet I'm interested. Thank you." I wish everybody did this. And then Google comes along and sanctimoniously, blesses open standards in HTML5. And then the next Google I/O, it's going to be a fascinating Google I/O where they torturously explain how they're, bombing the village to save it or whatever Vietnam reference we want to this. I mean, it's just laughable.
Yeah,
What
but the
they've done
difference-
is completely
I
upend.
guess I do not put Apple in the category of sainthood and doing stuff for us any more than I put Google over there.
Did
I
you
think
see
they both
True
have
Grit?
their. What's that?
Did you see True Grit?
The original.
Okay.
Long
Well,
time ago.
I can't account for your taste, but the
John Wayne.
John Wayne, I know he was great.
Steve.
What was his original name?
I live in Orange County. This
Was
is
it
like
Melvin
the home
Morrissey
Wayne.
or something like that?
It's like my airports, John Wayne Airport, man.
Listen, a great American.
Well, no, it
Don't
just gives
shoot
us
until
something
you
to
see
talk about here.
the rifle in my eyes. The new True Grit. The guy is honored for saying what he means and not throwing a lot of bullshit around.
Okay.
This is a bullshit
and
comment by
I
Google.
can agree with
They're
you.
already backpedaling on it. We're going to
I-
watch them backpedal. It's going to be like Scoble.
I would.
The
I would
apologies
agree
at the
with you,
bottom
but
of the thread.
I think that Apple, from my perspective, when I deal with them, tends to at least say we're doing this and this is why we're doing this, without trying to put it in some other things. Although they put out plenty of bullshit themselves. I'm just saying I
Which
can't
part?
color everything.
I mean,
can't color Google
how much
as-
more do you... Let's have the CEO, let's have Eric Schmidt do what Steve Jobs did, which is to go out and write something. Actually more than 140 characters where he
But Jobs
says...
didn't write- Jobs didn't
Steve
write
Jobs,
Not
he
immediately.
didn't pitch anything. He said, "We're doing this because we don't want these guys running our development environment."
And well done when he finally got to that.
Right. Let's see Eric Schmidt come out and say why they're doing this.
Maybe he'll do it. Maybe he'll just say what's going to be going on with it. But I think that there's a couple differences. I cannot put Apple over here and say, well, Apple is just doing things because Apple is looking out for the user, and then say,
No,
but
they're
Google
looking
is
out
only
for their
looking out for Google.
customers, which is a
What?
complete. They
Then
do what
no,
they do
no,
for their
no,
customers.
No,
Absolutely.
no.
Who, Google?
Apple, no.
Apple.
Or
No.
Apple?
Apple is not
Apple.
looking out for its users. Apple is looking out for itself in the exact same way that Google looks out for itself.
Okay.
And in both cases,
What was the noise?
the wise way to
Scoble.
look out
That
for
was me.
yourself
Scoble
is to
siren.
look out for your users.
No,
Okay.
With the gentleman
Danny,
from
I can see.
Scoble
I can see
yield.
both sides of this argument. Apple does shade it more toward the user than Google did with this discussion, right? Google
Totally.
this is all about reducing costs for somebody internally to get rid of a cost figure and push it off to some
No,
other
it isn't.
company.
Really is not.
It really is. Come on, I know how big
No.
companies work, and if there's $10 million on the line, somebody gets a raise by saying, "Hey, I saved the company $10 million."
So not Google.
Really?
Yes.
Give me a
really.
break. Come on, I've talked to
Really
enough
not Google. They,
employees lately.
they will throw large amounts of money at stuff if they believe in it. Buying onto is way more expensive than 20 years of MP4
I'm sorry,
licenses.
when
They're
Apple
doing this
didn't let-
because they
when
have a
Apple didn't
principle
let
behind
Google
it.
Voice onto its phone, that was for the users.
What?
Say
When
again?
Apple didn't allow Google Voice to be on its phone.
No, that was in
Apple
defense
didn't
of its
allow
art.
when Apple didn't allow Google Latitude to be on its phone.
And
that
actually,
was for the
it was
users.
in defense of the users because they wanted a common UI that everybody had the same thing, which
If-
makes it going
if
into a
Steve
store and saying
Jobs-
it's not working.
if Steve
and
Jobs
everybody had
hadn't-
the same-
Shh.
I've
If
done
Steve
support.
Jobs
I've
hadn't
worked support
created
lines.
this market, there would be no Android at all.
There's no common UI in the Apple apps.
It would be an Android.
No,
It'd be
no.
different.
Google Voice messes with the keyboard in the phone, which changes the UI substantially. And Steve Jobs wanted to hold that off until everybody figured out how to
I
use
don't
the
think that's
Yeah,
I think
that's
it's a
not
simpler
plausible.
argument, Robert. I think it's a simpler argument. Basically, what they say in their terms of service is they're not going to do anything that duplicates their own version of the services. They say it. They say it bluntly.
What was the issue with
Period.
Latitude that the users had to be protected?
I didn't say that. That's what.
No, I'm
maybe
I'm
what
asking. That's another thing, though. I'm coming back to what I'm saying is
Oh,
neither
the issue they'll say is,
No,
neither
Danny,
company-
come on.
neither
Let's look
company
at the
is- No, let me
look
just
at my
finish. Let me-
Galaxy S phone.
All right,
It
one at
has
a time.
52 It has 52 icons on it, right? Because the carriers are in control of this system. Look at the Apple negotiations with Verizon. You will not change our UI, and you will not put icons on the phone. You'll let the users do that. That is a very user-centric point of view, and
Oh my God! Yes,
that's
they
exactly.
are so user-centric. My goodness, Apple was so user-centric in releasing the iPhone that for 4 years, 5 years, the only place you could get it was on AT&T and its crappy network. And now when it rolls out, the identical phone except for the antenna, we're all going berserk because we can finally get a phone.
All right,
for
hold
the
on,
user's
hold on.
benefit.
Hold on.
No, for
Hold
the
on,
user's
hold on.
benefit down the line.
You said a
that
lot
works
there.
with
Let us
another
respond to it.
network. Oh, and
Hold
by
on.
the way, my iPhone sitting around here somewhere.
Will
is
the
still
gentleman
locked
from
to
Los
AT&T,
Angeles yield?
Even though I've paid for it ages ago, my iPhone 3s that are sitting over there, I can't unlock those and shove in another SIM because I'm wedded over to AT&T. So don't give me bullshit about how Apple is doing stuff for the users.
Okay, I'll give
Okay.
you some bullshit. I'll
Any
just
more
say it.
than I bullshit.
differently.
Hang out.
No, let me just
Take a
finish.
breath.
No, he
Let's
needs to
respond what
finish
you
this.
said.
finish. Any more than I want bullshit about Google doing stuff for the users.
Okay,
Both
so
companies
is
do
Google
stuff
full of shit?
for the benefit of their companies. And in a lot of cases, the thing that benefits their companies is doing stuff that benefits the users. And the reason you get the differences between them, though, is they have different interpretations of how best to serve those users.
Right.
And they disagree.
And
okay?
there's
Steve,
this
can
thing
I
called.
jump in, or do you want to jump in first?
What's going to do the best
All right,
thing for
Danny, let us respond. You went for 4
Well,
minutes
no,
there.
I'm
Come on.
finished. That's all I wanted to say. I wasn't able to get the last bit there. I'm
It's a
done.
filibuster.
Steve, you want to go first, or you want me to?
No, I'm going to clean up. Believe me.
Okay. So you said a lot there about the choice of carrier. Go back to 2007 when they made that choice. Verizon would not play ball with Apple. They would not put in things like the voicemail, the what did they call that, Steve?
Visual voicemail or visual?
Yeah, visual voicemail,
Visual
right?
mail, yeah, voicemail.
They would not play Apple's game. They would not guarantee that they wouldn't put stickers on the phone. They wouldn't guarantee that they wouldn't put apps on the phone. Look at how they deal with Samsung. Verizon sticks a bunch of crap on their phones, right? And Apple comes in and says, you're not going to do that. You're going to play our game for our customers because our customers demand something better than every other fucking phone out there.
Well, we didn't know
I've
that
got
when
an
they first
Android
did
phone,
it
and it
because
doesn't
they
have
didn't
any
even have any
Verizon
customers on the phone.
crap on
So
it.
they had assumptions of what Apple wanted. Okay, and I agree with that, by the way. And I wish that Google would go through with Android and do the same thing and gun around and say, these are the demands we have to do, and you have to do this sort of stuff. But Google's in a different situation where
They'll have an
push
opportunity
everything
to with their
else.
WebM, plugin.
What's that?
They'll have an opportunity with their WebM plugin that they're going to force down our throats with YouTube.
If they force it down our throats in YouTube, but that's also
What do you mean if?
But that's also
Why would they be
because-
so
because
stupid as to do this if they weren't going to take this and shove it down the YouTube audience's
like
throat?
Apple, which is dealing with a hardware basis and not necessarily dealing with its own software.
Hardware is software.
All of Apple's stuff is going through Apple's own platforms. Google's stuff is not going through Google's own platforms. Google's stuff is not just going through Chrome. Google stuff has to go out on the iPad, it has to go out on Android phones, it has to go out on web browsers, and 4 different web browsers at least. So they can't just go over at YouTube Grand Central and say, all right, now we're changing it all over. Because the Chrome team, by the way, which is divorced from the YouTube team, says we have to do this sort of thing. All right, they can't just make that sort of thing happen because then they piss off all these partnerships that we've just talked about. The YouTube people want their stuff distributed on the iPad. So they're going to be like, hey, Chrome guys, I'm glad you got the stuff going on of whatever you want to do, but we're not going to screw up this distribution deal we have over here because you want it. So I don't.
I agree with that analysis, but I think that you're naive if you think that this isn't why they're doing this now. They're cracking open some tortured logic that they can use to go after the YouTube audience because they have a monopoly in YouTube. Yeah. YouTube is by far the biggest H.264 thing on the planet, followed closely by Netflix. So what they're doing is...
Netflix isn't 264.
What?
Netflix isn't 264.
Netflix does do 264 because I can get it on the iPad.
Okay, but
how
it's
else
not
do I get it
primarily
on the iPad? What?
So I think it's primarily 264, but okay.
I can get it on the iPad. It works
Yeah,
fine.
you can. It's true.
Okay. So, I'm just talking about in terms of video cycles, bandwidth. YouTube, Netflix, huge. Netflix growing rapidly. Right? Those are the power players in this situation. Now, you think that Google, why, as Taschek said to begin with, for 10% of the audience, who gives a damn? That's not what this is about. This is about saying we are dangerous guys. We can even do stuff that completely violates everything that we've said about trust and openness and every other damn thing. And we're going to do it. And we're going to do it now. Why are they doing it now? My theory, because Verizon has finally capitulated as a result of 3 years of water torture coming from AT&T, giving a major carrier, giving Apple the ability to use Wi-Fi in a major device, a major mobile device. We forget, none of the carriers would let Wi-Fi in until Apple forced AT&T to do it.
That's not true at all.
Followed quickly by RIM.
That's totally not true. I had a Wi-Fi phone. I had, in 2005, a Windows Mobile 6 phone that did Wi-Fi.
I understand.
Well.
I understand, but I'm talking about this. Was Windows Mobile? Is it even now a superphone, a smartphone?
It did exactly what the iPhone 3 did and more. It did exactly what it did.
Sorry, Danny.
What was the impact on the network of iPhone traffic
nobody was
over the
using
browser?
Nobody was using it.
Thank you.
Because it was unusable.
Thank you.
But my Windows, no, it was not. My Windows Mobile phone.
I had
Would
one of
the
those.
judge
It was
instruct the
unusable.
witness to, answer the question?
Since I actually used a Windows Mobile phone on Verizon and also used a Windows Mobile phone in the UK and used an iPhone, I'm not talking out of my ass.
I didn't
It
say
was
you're
a
talking out of
phone,
your
and
ass.
it was a
What I'm
smartphone
saying is
that
that
actually ran applications, that actually let me view video,
it is
that actually let me shoot
absolutely,
video before the
it is.
iPhone did it. I had a very, very smart phone.
Yeah.
The iPhone was superior in the interface,
I'm
but it
talking
had
about.
Wi-Fi on it.
I'm
My
talking.
God, my God, I had tethering on my phone through Verizon
Yeah.
in 2005.
I don't think. I
Microsoft-
think Steve. I think you're
Microsoft
actually,
broke. Microsoft broke. What was the networking protocol, Kevin, that they put into Windows Windows 3.0, Windows for Workgroups? TCP/IP. They integrated TCP/IP.
TCP/IP. Okay,
There were
yeah.
plenty of networks that used TCP/IP, but it was a marginal, minuscule amount of traffic on the network. Microsoft introduced TCP/IP to the basic Windows stack and completely changed everything.
Sure.
That's
That was
what
huge.
Apple did with the carriers with Wi-Fi.
Yeah, but
they broke
Steve,
the
I don't
back.
think it was Wi-Fi that really
No.
got. I think it's things like visual voicemail, and it's the crap that the phone carriers
But-
were putting. You should see my Samsung Windows phone
Robert,
6
I don't
that
disagree
got.
with what you
No,
have to
I mean,
say.
what Apple did was introduce a beautiful, easy to use smartphone that mere mortals could deal with. You didn't have to pull out a stylus.
That's one of the
You
things.
didn't have to go through
And the browser worked, and it was
menus. You
beautiful.
didn't have to endure the stuff that people who used Trios or people who used Windows mobile phones had to go with. It's a beautiful phone for ordinary
I'll give you another
people, and
analogy.
a wonderful phone.
I'll give you another
It continues
analogy.
to be a wonderful phone, but I don't think the Wi-Fi aspect of it was that big a deal.
Okay, I completely disagree with you. I think that the last thing that the carriers wanted to do at that time, now they're embracing it because there's so much traffic on the network that they're desperate to be able to buy up, co-locos with all the other so-called competitors, so that they can push every 70% of that data over to the Wi-Fi network.
But even that argument,
At
one
the
of the reasons it seemed like AT&T. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Okay. How come we haven't seen video conferencing on portable devices?
Which portable devices?
These little tiny devices.
I would guess
Smartphones?
probably because we didn't have dual cameras.
Yeah, the
Well,
cameras on the
not
right
Why
side.
really.
did we not have dual
Verizon,
cameras?
Danny, I was in a Verizon store just 2 days ago, and the people behind the counter were talking about 4G, and Verizon has capped the 4G at something like 5 gigabytes per month. And they joked around. They said, you know what? With the 4G network, we can get to that cap in about 30 minutes using video. And
If you do that stuff, yeah.
so they've pretty much put a retardant on doing video with
They
your
don't
4G
want
network.
to do this. They don't want.
No, they
They
don't.
don't
But I mean,
want. Let me say what
Sure.
I'm trying to say. They don't want to have IP services on their meager bandwidth. They want to be able to go to the lowest common denominator, which is SMS, the way it's done in emerging nations around the world, where SMS is where all the value and where all the revenue growth is for carriers. They wanted to keep that to themselves, which is why we weren't allowed to have Skype on the phone. We weren't allowed to have any kind of IM on the phone. Google, to their credit, they were significant with Android in the early days when they built out, you can do Gtalk over the network.
But
from a plane. We did it yesterday.
Yeah, but I had IM on my Windows mobile phone, and I wasn't rooting or hacking
I'll
Verizon.
give you your Windows mobile phone.
Right.
You lived in a shiny new world of 12 people,
Yeah,
and they all now have tablets.
See, Steve, this is the
From
problem with
different
arguing the
manufacturers, by
Wi-Fi.
the way.
I don't think it was the Wi-Fi. I think it was the experience that Apple
I don't
brought.
dispute any of the drivers. What I'm saying to you is that Apple paid a big cost for getting leverage with the carriers.
Yeah.
This whole discussion about open versus closed is essentially beating up on Apple because they control their environment. They do it for a number of reasons, some of which you've suggested, like they want to make money. I want them to make money because they keep rolling out these amazingly cool services that nobody else can get to. And as evidence of that fact is that when Android rolls out tethering and those kinds of services in the last Froyo or Adobe Plus or whatever the last name of it was of the client, they've got switches where you can turn it on or off depending on what the carrier says. That's not an innovation. That's not leverage.
I don't understand.
Problem.
Android
does not have
out
the
a
leverage
hotspot service that people could enable, and the iPhone didn't have it at all.
It was
not
the only
not
reason.
on every phone, Danny.
And
I know, but at least I could get it. At least I could go into the store and say, I want to have this kind of a service.
But it's not in a vacuum, Danny. It came as a result of. I was interested in the EVO when it came out because it came out before that version of Android that supported tethering. It came out with its own tethering. You could turn it on, and there was a hotspot. I could then do FaceTime. Unfortunately, the battery died after 12 minutes.
Right.
Okay, so 10 hours, 12 minutes, fail.
Oh, your battery's going to die on an iPhone if you start using hotspot. Your battery's going to die.
I don't disagree. So if we can plug it into the car so that it's part of the car and we just talk to it directly and go over again, it comes back to the fact the carriers innately do not want to spend the money to build out their networks and buy up spectrum in order to support these kinds of 3 and 4G services in order to have it blown away by constant video traffic. So what do? What does Apple do? It incents the establishing of this audience and this market by making it available over Wi-Fi. So that is not what the carriers wanted 5 years ago when the iPhone first
if you go back when AT&T first got the iPhone, it was not a 3G device, and the only way a lot of people could actually keep up with the actual 3G devices that were out there was the fact, if I remember correctly, that AT&T was giving you free Wi-Fi access anywhere that they had a Wi-Fi hotspot.
Yeah, but that was
seemed to be in part of getting that traffic off of their system.
Yeah, and when the Baby Bells broke up, Microsoft bought it's similar to the Facebook deal. They spent like $200 million or something, $20 million I think in those days, for a piece of Comcast in order to support the cable networks to start to build out broadband services. Was it in order to own a piece of Comcast? No, it was in order to create a competition between cable and the phone companies. That's what Apple did with the iPhone with Wi-Fi. That was a significant and continues to be a significant way that Apple releases advanced services on the iPhone and the iPad. They bring it out on Wi-Fi, and then when people get used to it and the market develops around it and there's some commerce around it, then it puts pressure on the vendors and the carriers to be able to unbundle it. And Google has been fantastic at supporting that effort by driving in between releases of the iPhone those kinds of services. I mean, their ad campaign for video chat, that's all you ever see now. Right? These services.
The Evo one or the Apple one?
No, it's a Android one.
Yes, it's the Evo one. Yeah.
Is it Evo? Yeah.
They're using Quick. Yeah.
Right, and
I like the T-Mobile one where the guy walks out of the Wi-Fi zone.
Yeah,
have you seen that?
Exactly.
I've seen that one, no.
But so I'm amazed that I'm still having to justify what is intuitively obvious. But as with RSS being dead, I'll continue to do it.
Do you see my Oprah magazine? Hey, by the way, just a side segment. You have to buy this thing every month, and it doesn't actually ask you to renew. So that's kind of stupid, don't you think? I don't think that's a smart app.
I think if you're an Oprah fan, you're going to renew it.
I think
Go ahead, Steve. I just wanted to interject So
You know what? At the
no,
newsstand,
we need Steve's on a roll. I wanted to go back. Just a little comedy.
when you go into the newsstand, you buy O magazine. Does it ask you to renew right there?
It has a little piece
Only
of
if you
paper
got
that falls
Wi-Fi.
out that
Yeah, it
says
does,
subscribe.
but it always falls out at the cash register,
That's
and
right.
I never pick it up.
And when you lean over to pick up the paper, your bus hits you. So there's a user experience for you.
Oh my god.
All right, Taschek, what do you think?
He stopped thinking his brain.
I
Talk
stopped.
about-
I did. I stopped thinking. I mean, it was. I'm still processing. I'm still thinking about O magazine. Yeah. User experience. I don't know. The way we think about it, the way that modern enterprises think about the user experience is that if your users are happy, then you'll do better business. But clearly, there's a lot of pragmatists at companies, and they look at the bottom line very closely. And there's no doubt about it that they look at that when you cap your bandwidth, just like Xfinity has a 250 gigabyte cap on cable. Whereas DSL doesn't have a cap yet, at least in San Francisco. They're always looking at those justifications, but if they look at the user experience first, I think they'll do better. Did anyone see the interview with Charlie Rose with the Verizon CEO, who's going out this year? Actually, it's quite fascinating about how the history of the AT&T Verizon Apple relationship started. It was like 4 years ago or whatever. Verizon had set up cell antennas there, but Apple was always committed to the AT&T technology, the GSM technology, because it was more efficient on battery life and it had the user experience that Apple wanted, which was the tied together data and voice networks. That so it allowed a multitask between a call and the data, whereas Verizon focused on their highest reliability of the data and highest reliability of the voice networks, but separated them out in the CDMA technology. And he did a very nice job explaining that. And then Charlie Rose asked at the end, he goes, "Well, what are you going to support? You have the iPhone on Verizon now. What's going to happen with Android?" And he goes, "Well, it's I think." How can I put this? This is what he said.
Bear in mind he's going out. He can
Yeah.
say this because he's about to be ejected from the building.
Exactly, but it was. I mean, he answered it well. He said they are going to promote both. Basically, that's what you're going to take away from there. And I think Verizon is going to be by the end of the year they'll have the combined data networks and they'll have 4G. It's going to be a force to reckon with, and the more that Apple gets the momentum, that puts the pressure on the carrier to stop squeezing the customer, the better. And if Google does the same through Android, and doesn't kowtow to everything, just trying to get phones out there so they can build up the ad network, the better for the consumer. And once the people realize this in the companies, the better they will be. That's all that's to it.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, Microsoft.
Go
Ahead. Well, I was going to say, meanwhile, Microsoft and RIM, they don't have any clout, right now to do that. Microsoft can at least take the developer audience, and RIM has the BES server, which appeals to information technology.
Yeah, but there's no small amount of damage that's being done to RIM by the Verizon iPhone as well, because having something in the major cities that's reliable, assuming that they can actually handle this. They have had 2 years to build out their network to take advantage of this. Is going to really put the hurt on the BlackBerry.
Well, yeah, the BlackBerry. I mean, they should continue to invest in BES and go open on the device, and probably go with Android on their device rather than the RIM OS.
But this is the classic mistake that people like. What was that? Do you remember that? What was that? Remember that thing that Leo Laporte went berserk about? What was that device?
The Pre
the
for
Palm.
Palm.
Yeah, the
Palm
Palm Pre. Right. I mean, it's sort of it's this classic, conundrum that everybody else faces, which is, do you support Google in their religious jihad around open, which turns out to be a phony marketing ploy?
But yes, they should, because
That's
RIM
true.
still has that.
Come on,
that-
Kevin. How much
you're
more do
trying-
I
you're
have to
trying to
say
troll me
about
here.
this?
So the thing is, the thing the pre did was they said, okay, you write apps in HTML5 to run on here. That's how WebOS works.
Right, and that video stuff is going to be HTML5. That's going to run the H.264. Okay, cool. Oh, wait.
Yeah. Well, there's the two things. There's the
Thank you,
innovator's dilemma, and then there's the pioneers getting the arrows in the back, and that's where Palm is there. They can.
Palm, by the way, on February 9th, I think, I'm going to the press conference. They're bringing out a new Palm Pre and a new tablet. And I've seen the Pre, and it's a pretty interesting take.
But it's based on a proprietary OS, right?
Well, it's based on the WebOS.
Yeah, proprietary OS.
Yeah.
And not number 2 either.
No, it's probably number 5, 6, 7. Something
Right,
like
that's
that.
all. It's not a criticism of their, they hired everybody that they could from Apple, but
Yeah.
that doesn't add up to much. I mean, look at what the Windows Phone is. Windows Phone is, from what I hear, I played with it. It's a cool device.
Yeah.
I would never buy one.
I don't think they're going to go head to head with Apple on the phone. I think they're going to. I'm starting to look at it again, and when you see the phone, it's I can't say much about it, but when you see it, it's like, oh, maybe I need a second phone.
What, the Pre you're talking about?
You mean a second phone after an Android device? That's called a third phone.
Well, I have 5 phones, but
But I
I'm
mean,
thinking
seriously.
of a normal user who's going to have a big ass, piece of glass with Android or
Here's my
iOS
big ass
on
piece
it.
of glass right here.
And this thing is going to be maybe an evening phone or
Designer
evening
phones.
a fashion
The o-
phone,
It'll be the Oprah phone.
the Oprah phone. I could totally see that.
All right. Once around the virtual table, we'll start with Kevin since we dropped him last week.
Oh, I gotta go.
Oh, that was yours. Thanks, Danny.
I sorry.
You go first, Danny. That's
I've got a
okay.
call. I've got to go.
Nice of you to just join us, evidently.
I'm really sorry. I got to jump off because I've got another call coming in. We've gone longer.
Yeah,
but
you're-
I had a good time.
Too much fun with the Oprah app, I think.
I've,
Too
you know,
much filibustering.
Oh,
Yes.
I have to say, I bow to Robert in that he is definitely right, and that he watches all these things. And I have to say, Robert starts telling me there's some app I should look at. I listen and I learn.
Yeah,
So-
we saw that.
And I also got
It
to
cost you $3 too.
gotta go crank up the
Robert's
car.
getting a kickback here.
Okay, thanks,
Anyway,
Danny.
Sorry, I gotta
That's
jump
influence.
off.
I got Danny Sullivan to spend $3.
It was poor, but
Can you be on next week, by the way?
yeah, I should be fine.
Okay,
You
excellent.
guys all have a good weekend. Okay?
You too.
All
right.
right.
Kevin.
I'll say that the WebM move is the right move at the wrong time. It's too early to drop support for 264, and it's naive. I think it's just saying there should only be one video codec for the web is wrong.
Robert.
There goes my phone. I don't like the Google decision, but I don't think it'll affect me all that much. I think the world is moving fast, and we're not going to pay attention to that too much.
As John Gruber said, it's too late.
No, somebody else said that. And John Gruber
I know,
sort of made fun
but
of-
if you read it, I linked to it. If you read it, it's too late. It's too late for Google to do this.
yeah,
Okay.
or too early.
No, I don't think it's too early. I think it's too late to posture around open for a proprietary motive, which is transparently what this is about.
That's a proprietary motive. I don't agree with that.
Please. It's designed to damage iOS and nothing else.
So this is a Vic Condotta move, you think?
No, I don't. See Bob Muglia thread. Okay. John Taschek.
I don't know if it's too late. I think that it's. I think their communication is is really being tested, their communication strategy around it, through these blogs without announcements, without gathering any supporters in advance of making such an announcement. I mean, they did something in April, they launched it, but then just to come hard line down on it now is they're gonna suffer for that for a while and backtrack for weeks. And I think that plays to a communication strategy, which to me says that it's not necessarily too late or too early, but within Google, they don't have alignment, and they have to get that very quickly if they're going to compete in this space. That said, I don't care. I'll go out. I'm not a fanboy of one or the other, and if there's a cool looking tablet or a phone, it's fine. That's great, and the more competition, the better.
Okay, I think that's well said. I want to thank John Taschek and Danny Sullivan and Robert Scoble and Kevin Marks. I want to thank Rackspace and particularly Rob Legess for bringing this show back to the air or the internet or whatever this is, and TriCaster from NewTek, without which this would not be on video. And I want to thank everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. See you again next time. Bye-bye.